With the 2025 NFL season officially coming to a close, several NFL teams will be looking at the 2026 NFL draft to fill their void at quarterback. So in today's video, I want to give you guys my top 10 quarterbacks of the 2026 NFL draft. Hit that like and subscribe button if you guys do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin at number 10 with Cole Payton, the quarterback for North Dakota State University. So look, I'm not going to beat around the bush. The 2026 quarterback draft class is not very good, and we're starting off with a first-year starting quarterback in Cole Payton, who has some good to him, but realistically speaking, I don't know if he gets drafted. If he does so, it's definitely going to be on day 3. He's 6'3", 233 pounds. He's coming off a year where he basically got his first ever start. He was 72% completion percentage, 2,719 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I think there's a lot to like about his game, but I also just generally don't believe that this is somebody that you can take in a day 2 pick and expect big things from him. This is somebody who you're drafting to maybe be a bit of a sleeper pick in like round 4 to 7, somewhere in that range, and you're hoping you can develop him into becoming a solid enough backup quarterback. Now, we have seen some of these North Dakota State guys not really pan out in the NFL. Obviously, the biggest name here is Trey Lance. Now, they have a couple guys who have ended up being decent backup quarterbacks. You know, look again at Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, for example. I think that's kind of what the mold of Cole Payton will be. In terms of his pros, I think he's got a really nice arm that can make all types of throws, whether it's throwing it with power, layering the football across the field. He can make most throws on the field. He's also a decent enough athlete for his size. At 6'3", 233 pounds, he can run decently well. He's very much a kind of a bruiser style guy. He'll put his nose down here and there, get some extra yardage. So that's kind of the major pros to his game, and that's what he's going to hang his hat on to get into the NFL. Having a big arm and being able to run. Now, in terms of the cons, he's a left-handed quarterback. It's a bit unconventional. We've seen a lot of left-hand quarterbacks not always pan out in the NFL. The most recent example is Tua Tagovailoa. I don't personally believe that just because he's a left-hander makes him a bad prospect. I'm just throwing it out there that he is a lefty, which for some teams might be a bit of a breaking point. He also just has a ton of lapses in judgment and decision-making. There's times where he holds onto the ball way too long and he'll take an unnecessary sack. Or there's times where he's just going to stare down his first read and he's going to throw an interception. I've seen it multiple times out there when he's staring down his first read, which could be a curl, a comeback route, or something along those lines. And defenses are just swarming that player because they know that ball is going to go there because he will stare down his players at times. I think there's some things to his game that you obviously like. Again, the big arm, the dual threat ability, but when it comes to the mental aspect of the game, I just don't know if right now he's pro ready. Again, dash this guy, maybe you put him on the practice squad, maybe he's your third string quarterback for a few years, and maybe he can develop his way into being your backup quarterback. But again, I just don't think that right now the player that I see today is somebody that I believe can stick around to be a starting level quarterback in the league. I just don't think that's going to happen. Moving over to number 9, I have the Baylor quarterback Sawyer Robertson. So Sawyer's been in college football for a few years now. He's a senior. He's been back-to-back starting quarterbacks here. Obviously started off at Mississippi State, then transferred to Baylor. He's been the quarterback for Baylor since, I believe, 2024. And he's been pretty solid during his time there at Baylor. I think there's a lot of good things that he's done for that school. Obviously, Baylor not really had the most success under Sawyer, but I thought Sawyer in general gave the team a chance. The team just around him wasn't particularly great, but he's 6'4", 220 pounds. In terms of some of his pros, again, big arm talent. I think he can make any throw on the field, especially these tight window throws. That's one thing I do find impressive about Sawyer. There's multiple times where he's got these really tight window and narrow lanes to throw the ball into, and he'll hit the player, sometimes in stride, sometimes right where the ball needs to be. I like that a lot about him. I think he's also pretty poised in the pocket. He has been, obviously a starting quarterback for several years. You can sort of see that veteranship, that experience playing under duress, things of that nature. I do like the fact that he doesn't really panic too much. Now, in terms of his cons, he's really inaccurate. For somebody who has such a big arm, he is just wild with the ball in the air, especially deep and especially in the intermediate. This past year, a 60% completion percentage. The year prior, a 62% completion percentage. He's just a bit wild out there with the ball. He really struggles to get that ball under control. I don't really know if I'd necessarily say it is the mechanics that are wrong, but obviously there's something there that he has to clean up to get that accuracy down. And I also think, kind of like what we talked about with Cole Payton, there's also times where he will lock onto his first read. Now, it's not every single play, just the same thing with Cole Payton, where it's not every single play, but there are times where he will look at his first read and he's not looking off of it. He's not checking the second, third, and fourth read like you'd want to see from a quarterback to go through your progressions. He does that here and there, but for the most part, it is, I'm looking at my first read. If it's not there, I'm either running, I'm either hitting my check down. Sometimes he'll go to a second, third, and fourth read, but a lot of the time it feels like he is locking onto that first read. So he's got to improve at being, able to scan the field properly. So again, he's got good size, has a big arm, has a ton of experience. I do think, kind of like Cole Payton, we're talking about somebody you draft in the back end of probably day 3. You stash him to be the third string or practice squad guy, and you let him develop a little bit to see if he can become a backup quarterback in this league, which backups are very valuable. So expect Sawyer Robertson to potentially get drafted. We saw some guys last year that really weren't probably going to be drafted, but they got drafted to develop into being backups or practice squad guys. I think that's kind of what the mold of Sawyer Robertson will be. Moving over to number 8, we have Cade Klubnik, the Clemson quarterback. So coming into the 2025 season, there was a lot of people out there that had Cade Klubnik as either their number 1, number 2, or number 3 quarterback heading into the year. I was always a bit more cautious with Cade Klubnik because I didn't really ever see anything that was special from him, and I didn't love his size. And unfortunately for Cade, and I hate to say this, he took a pretty massive step back in 2025, unfortunately. Last year in 2024 was kind of his big breakout year. He had over 3,600 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, led Clemson into the playoffs, gave my Texas Longhorns a real run for their money in the postseason. And then heading into 2025, you have Avion Terrell back. You got Peter Woods. You have Antonio Williams. You have all these other pieces. Blake Miller's back at tackle. Like, there's so many positive things that was going for Clemson. And then they just did not take a step forward whatsoever this year. The team took a massive step back on both sides of the field. And Clemson ended up being kind of a bad football team this year. Now, bad in the context of who Clemson has been the past few years. That all said, when it comes to Cade, he has a lot of experience under his belt. He's been a 3-year starter for the team, has put up a lot of numbers, 10,000 passing yards, 73 touchdowns, 24 interceptions. He's done a lot of good things for this program, and so hopefully Clemson fans, despite having the bummer year, his senior year, can still give him his flowers and can still respect the fact that he put together a pretty solid career at Clemson. That all said, he is a bit shorter. He's about 6'2". I think he's probably more about 6'1". We'll get real measurements when we get to the combine, but Clemson has him listed at 6'2", 210 pounds. He's a pretty small quarterback, so he's going to take some big hits, and it's going to hurt him a little bit more. I think he plays pretty well when the pressure's in his face. I do believe that it kind of regressed this year, but again, that 2024 film was not too shabby by no means. He was making some plays with his legs. He had over 400 rushing yards. He was extending plays. He was, making some playmaking stuff. But just in general, the 2024 season showed a lot of things that we wanted to see from him given his size. There was a little bit of some Bryce Young isms to him last year, but unfortunately just didn't really, develop into 2025. He kind of took a bit of a step back. Defense has figured out his pros, his cons, how to take advantage of certain issues he's had. He also just didn't have the great team around him. I think his ball placement's pretty good. He keeps players safe on throws. He doesn't give a whole lot of quote-unquote hospital balls or anything like that. He doesn't have high-end velocity on his throws. I think his arm talent in general is just average to maybe even a little bit below average. And he's also somebody that wants to see his player open. He doesn't want to throw them open. He doesn't want to play with the anticipation, but that is kind of what his game needs to be. He's not a big guy. He doesn't have a big arm. He doesn't really have a whole lot of major pros to his game. What his pro needs to be is the fact that he can anticipate throws, and he is a smarter player than everyone out there. That's kind of what Tua has been the past few years. Now, obviously, he's regressed this year quite a bit, but Tua, over the course of his career, wasn't the fastest guy, didn't have the best arm, was injury prone, things like that. But he was one of the best quarterbacks at anticipating throws, playing with anticipation, and it led to him having a ton of success in his earlier career. That's what Cade Klubnik needs to become, and that's not unfortunately really what his game is. Now, he is pretty mobile. He can move around decently enough. If you believe in the 2024 film, then he is a draftable player, but unfortunately, I just don't really see the big enough pros to his game for me to really want to take him anywhere besides like a day 3 pick. Next up at number 7, let's talk about Garrett Nussmeier. So Garrett Nussmeier kind of falls into the same sort of conversation as Cade Klubnik. Garrett had a lot of hype, potentially be the number 1, number 2, or number 3 quarterback in this year's draft. And unfortunately, the entire LSU team just fell off a cliff, and Garrett Nussmeier himself played pretty bad this year. He was coming off a 2024 season where he had over 4,000 passing yards, 29 touchdowns. He did have 12 interceptions, which was the major concern with him. But that was also kind of what gave him some of the hype heading into this year. Everyone knew, hey, we got a veteran quarterback who's a gunslinger, can make all types of throws across the field. Sure, he's not the biggest guy in the world. Sure, he doesn't have the best arm talent. But man, is he fearless. He can run a little bit. He can hit any sort of throw out there. And unfortunately, in 2025, it was just a bad year. 1,927 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Now, he did not finish the season as the starter. I believe there was also some injuries he was dealing with throughout the season. That is sort of the excuse you can give for Garrett. The fact that there was some rumors about, I believe it was an oblique injury that hurt him this year. If you believe in the injury bug, then yeah, then maybe Garrett can work his way back into being a day 2 pick. But if you don't believe it, which I'm kind of on the fence about it, if you don't believe that his poor play was because of that injury, then you're looking at probably a day 3 guy. Now, he is the son of a coach, so there is some familiarity with probably some coaching staffs out there. He's 6'2", 200 pounds. He has a gunslinger mentality. He's, genuinely speaking, a full-on gunslinger. He is going to put the ball in harm's way at times. He will throw every single quote-unquote impossible ball out there, which sometimes is good, but sometimes is not so good. He's got a really quick snap to release time. He's pretty decent mechanics as well. That all said, he plays a lot of hero ball. His lack of fear sometimes can put him into some tough situations. I think his pocket movement and navigating through traffic is not great. He just, unfortunately, again, it's one of those things where it's like, if you believe the 2024 version of Garrett is who he is, then he's a draftable day 2 pick. If you think the 2025 version is much more of who he actually is, then I don't really know where he goes. I do believe Garrett will be drafted somewhere probably between rounds 3 to 5. I think that's about his range. And I think he will be somebody that is instantly put as a backup quarterback. And then let's see if he can develop into maybe being a starter if you believe in the 2024 film. But if you don't, I do believe he will, at the bare minimum, be a pretty solid backup. Next up, at number 6, we have Drew Aller, the former Penn State quarterback. This is another one of these players. We're talking Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, and now Drew Aller, who returned to college for another year in hopes of basically securing the being a top 10, top 5 pick. And it just did not work out for him. He was coming into the season thought of as maybe the number 1 or, again, 2 or 3 quarterback in this class, and he had a terrible year. Obviously, he did have a season-ending injury, so we must take that into account. Frankly, I kind of believe that season-ending injury might have been the best thing for him because he was putting some pretty crappy film out there, and Penn State fell apart towards the back end. And had he played throughout the rest of the season and struggled the entire season, I do believe the allure of Drew Aller would have kind of fallen apart out there. Now, Drew Aller's a big dude, 6'5", 240 pounds. He's got a genuinely really good arm that can make basically every throw out there. We'll get to his cons here in a second, but I think generally speaking, he's pretty safe with the football. He doesn't really put the ball in harm's way a ton. I do believe he does play with a bit more anticipation than what we talked about with Cade Klubnik. When he's in a rhythm, he's a pretty solid quarterback. Again, with that size, with that frame, not really a mobile guy. He's much more of a guy that's going to sit in the pocket and try and dissect your defense, which when he's in a rhythm and when guys are running open, he can be a pretty good player. The issue with him is that there's a lot of stuff he's got to work out. Number 1, his accuracy is a bit all over the place. It was an issue last year. It kind of hurt him a little bit this year. He's coming off a major leg injury this year, so that's also a bit of a concern. His footwork isn't the best. He doesn't play best under pressure. There's times where decision making is very questionable. It's just a lot of like, do you buy into the size, the arm talent, and the overall quote unquote potential that is Drew Aller? Because if you do, then you're looking at probably a day 2, early day 3 pick. But if you believe he's been at Penn State for multiple years, he hasn't really taken a big step forward yet, he's still developing, he might just be a backup quarterback, which is kind of what I fall into right now, then you're looking at probably a day 3, maybe at the earliest, early round 3 type of guy. There's a lot to like about him. It's just a shame that he just can't get it down, which is kind of frustrating, but it's just kind of what happens with some of these quarterbacks where he's got everything working for him. He just hasn't really gotten it to work. Now, maybe he goes to a team that has a veteran quarterback, maybe like, I don't know, a Los Angeles, maybe even a Dallas to sit behind Dak Prescott for a few years and kind of develop behind him. Just throwing some names out there. I think if you were to sit behind a backup quarterback for several years, develop a little bit, he could be a solid backup quarterback that maybe could work his way into being a starter. But again, I just don't think NFL teams are going to have that level of patience required for Drew. So it's a shame. Didn't really have the best year this year. I thought last year he was pretty good in terms of a prospect, but it didn't really pan out this year. Moving over to number 5, I have Taylon Green, the Arkansas quarterback. So again, we really haven't gotten, now that we're in my top 5, into like any true starting quarterbacks yet. And I kind of feel the exact same way about Taylon Green. He's a big ass dude and he can run for days. He's 6'6", 235 pounds. He's a massive dude that can run. That's right there is kind of the best way to describe him as an athlete. He's also got a pretty lively arm. He can make a lot of nice throws out there on the field. Deep passes are pretty solid. Working in the intermediate, he's pretty decent at that too. Like he has the arm talent to where he can just kind of flick the ball out there and it goes 60 yards and it looks quite impressive. Some of the issues with him though is the fact that he is a veteran quarterback who still has mechanical issues, who still has some decision-making issues, and he's just very inconsistent as a player in general. Those are the biggest sort of qualities to him. He's kind of a boom or bust player. Now, when I say boom, you're talking about a really good backup who maybe could develop into being a starter. When we talk about the bust, you're looking at somebody who might just be a big ass athletic guy who's probably your backup to third string quarterback. Again, somebody who I'm probably drafting early day 3. I think all these guys are day 3 picks so far. That's what I see in Taylon Green. There's games and there's moments where Arkansas's offense looks borderline unstoppable and Taylon Green looks incredible. But there's also moments where it's like, Taylon, what are you doing out there? Why are you making this terrible decision? Why are you missing a throw that's so easy out there? It's the consistency issue in his game. But again, if you buy into the size, the speed, and things like that, there's something there with Taylon Green. Moving over to number 4, I have Carson Beck, the former Georgia quarterback, now the Miami quarterback. So I can already hear the groans and the moans and like, really? Carson Beck is the 4th best quarterback? Trust me, I'm right there with you guys. When I thought about my list and I was kind of listing the pros and cons, and I had Carson Beck at 4, it made me want to throw up because I feel like nobody likes Carson Beck and I kind of don't like him either. I just kind of think he's a bit of a douchebag, but I don't know him personally, so I don't want to say that outward. It's just kind of what I see from the media and from what I've heard about the guy. That all said, this quarterback draft class is very thin in the back end, and Carson Beck has some qualities to him that I think teams might kind of gravitate towards. Number 1, he's got a really good size and frame to him, 6'4", 225 pounds. When his feet are set, he can make any throw out there on the field. He's got a ton of experience. He's seen a lot of different defenses. He knows what it takes to be a quarterback in college football and how to manage a game sometimes. Now, that all said, he's a statue in the pocket. He struggles under pressure. He hesitates too much, even when windows are open, which can sometimes lead him to throwing some bad interceptions. I also don't necessarily think he's the best leader guy out there. We've seen him, I'm not going to say throw guys under the bus, but I don't know, kind of throw guys under the bus. He's a system quarterback, and that's why he's not a first-round pick. Now, in 2020, I guess heading into 2024 draft, he was thought of as a number 1 type of pick, and then he had the shitty 2024 season, and then all of us were like, yeah, Carson Beck is just a backup quarterback. But that's exactly what you're going to draft Carson Beck to be. You're not drafting Carson Beck because of the upside. You're drafting Carson Beck because he's going to be a solid backup quarterback that if my starter goes down, Beck will go in there and likely won't cost you the game. Now, he did at times at Miami. He had a couple big bad interception games, but generally speaking, he's going to get the ball out on time. He's going to make the right throws. He's going to manage the game. He's not going to win you games necessarily, but he is just a solid backup. And again, that is a quality that some teams are going to look at. They're going to look at the size, the arm talent, the overall experience, and just say, you know what? It's a low upside pick, but I know what his floor is. And that floor is a solid backup quarterback, and his ceiling is a solid backup quarterback. So that's why Carson Beck's at number 4 for me. But now we enter into our top 3, and we are going to begin with the Alabama quarterback, Ty Simpson. So this is really where the quarterback draft class actually starts to take a bit of a leap forward. Ty Simpson, to me, is the only quarterback we've talked about so far that I could kind of see being an early day 2 or even maybe a day 1 pick. Everyone else, I think, is a late day 2 to probably somewhere and more than likely as a day 3 pick. When it comes to Ty Simpson, he's a 1-year starter, but he's put on some really impressive tape out there for Alabama. He's a bit shorter, about 6'2", maybe a bit more like 6'1", a bit bigger than Bryce Young. Obviously, Bryce is kind of like the shortest we've seen and kind of the smallest we've seen, not necessarily of all time, but in recent years. He's a bit more of like a bigger version of Bryce. He's got a bit more size to him, a bit more mass. He's not big, though, in terms of an NFL quarterback, which might be the part of the reason why teams might be a bit cautious on him. Again, we talked about Carson Beck being 6'4", 225. Ty Simpson is probably like 6 foot, 6'1", 205, 210 pounds, which some teams are going to look at and say, Kyler hasn't worked out. Russell Wilson hasn't worked out since being in Seattle. Bryce Young's been up and down, et cetera, et cetera. Shorter quarterbacks haven't really panned out so far, so that's going to hurt Ty Simpson and his draft stock. That all said, I do think there's a lot to like about his game. He's a good rhythm passer. When he's in a rhythm, he is very accurate. He's really good in the intermediate range when it comes to hitting these comeback routes and in-breaking routes. He plays with great anticipation. He drives the ball down the middle of the field. He's a solid enough athlete. He can make plays on the run. I think there's some really solid reps out there where he's making some playmaking snaps too, which is what you want to see from him as well. There are some cons though. He's a very undersized quarterback. He doesn't have elite arm talent. His deep ball accuracy is not the best. He doesn't really have the velocity to drive the ball down the field. But again, you're not really drafting him to be this guy that's going to air the ball out there. You're going to draft him to be kind of what Bryce Young was drafted to be. Somebody that can play with anticipation, drive the ball down the middle of the field, run a little bit, use the playmaking chops a little bit, use your IQ to your advantage less so than your physical abilities. And that's what kind of leads me to saying Ty Simpson is far and away the best quarterback we've talked about so far in this list. Everyone else has so many massive cons. The only major con with Ty Simpson, kind of struggles under pressure. He's gotten better at times. I thought versus Oklahoma in the playoff game, he was actually pretty good against pressure. He does generally struggle with that though. And he's a bit undersized. He doesn't have the best arm talent, but he plays with anticipation, which is what you want to see from these shorter, smaller quarterbacks. He's mobile enough. He can get out of sacks, things like that. I'm looking right now. I would probably say I would draft him late round 1, early day 2. But if you get taken at like the 15th pick, I won't really be mad about it because this quarterback draft class, not very deep, especially with all the guys that end up going back to college. All right, next up, let's talk about Dante Moore, the former UCLA Bruin, now an Oregon Duck. So Dante Moore, just like Ty Simpson, is sort of a breakout candidate. He didn't really play a ton when Dylan Gabriel was there. This is really his first year being the guy for Oregon, and he's been really good this year, like a really productive player. With over 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, has led, obviously, Oregon into the playoffs, and I expect them to make a pretty deep playoff run this year. He's got a lot of good qualities to him. Now, I do have to say this. He hasn't committed to this year's draft. Neither has Ty Simpson, by the way. So if those guys aren't in this class, yikes, this class gets that much worse. I'm going to expect them to go, though. I think that both these guys are going to learn from Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, and say, you know what? We should probably just go. Yeah, we're probably not ready yet. Yeah, we probably need more reps and more time under our belt, but we just can't afford to have a shitty year after this promising year and in this class where we might be first-round picks. Next year's draft class looks to be a lot better. So if I'm Dante Moore and Ty Simpson, I'm coming out this year. I don't care that I probably need more time under my belt. I'm going this year because in the NFL, you have only so many opportunities to make it in the league. And if you don't come out this year and you have a bad year next year, you could be the next Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller, et cetera, et cetera. So I expect Dante to be in this class, but if he's not, then yank him out of there and throw, I don't know, put myself at number 10. I might be the 10th best quarterback in this class. I'm kidding, obviously, but you get my point. With that said, though, he's about 6'3", 206 pounds. I don't know if he's actually 6'3". He might be a little bit shorter than that, but he's a bit bigger than Ty Simpson, so he does have that. Still, there are times where it's like, yeah, his height is still a bit of an issue out there. He's had some really good plays this year. He's really calm under pressure, a really composed player. I love the way that he was composed in their game versus Penn State. Now, obviously, Penn State has ended up being kind of a bad football team, and maybe that win isn't as good as it once was, but they went into a massive home game versus Penn State. The crowd was going nuts. And Dante Moore, I don't even know if he sweated in that game. He was just calm and composed. And I'm so excited to see his composure and things like that the rest of the season because that composure, it also works in the game as well. When he's playing out there, he plays really calm out there. I think he's got a really good, almost effortless arm that can make all types of throws. He's got a decent enough arm talent. I don't want to call it like elite arm talent, but I think he's got good arm talent. He can make throws with all types of arm angles, stuff like that. He reads the field decently well. Now, in terms of the cons, this is somebody that he is a bit of a thinner guy. He probably needs to put on a bit more weight. He's also just a one-year starter. And I personally believe that I would rather draft somebody that has 2 or 3 years of experience over somebody that has 1 year of experience. But in this draft class, beggars can't be choosers. This is somebody that only has 1 year of play, so there is a bit of a risk you're running there. I do believe there are times where his internal clock can be a little bit sped up, and he might, I don't know, make kind of a weird throw. But generally speaking, I think he's a pretty clean prospect. Now, again, he's not a perfect player, but he's a round 1 guy to me. If he does decide to come out in this year's draft class, I think he's probably a top 5 pick. Not saying he's a top 5 talent in this class, but because the quarterback position is so valued, I don't believe that Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore are making it out of the top 5. Spoiler alert on Fernando Mendoza, my bad. But yeah, I think both those guys probably go 1, 2, maybe the latest 3 or 4. But let us go ahead and move over to number 1. I have Fernando Mendoza, the Indiana quarterback. Mendoza is probably going to be the number 1 player in this class when it comes to the draft because he's got everything you want and he doesn't have a ton of concerns to his game. Now, he's taken a big step forward from last year with Cal, now coming over to Indiana. He's a big-ass dude, 6'5", 225 pounds. He sees the field very well. He'll go from one read to the next read to the next read. His mechanics are really sharp. He can make Sunday throws all across the field. Now, in terms of some of his issues, he can be a bit overzealous out there. He can be a bit over-aggressive and trust his arm a little bit too much. He's not the most mobile guy in the world. He's a bit more of a clumsier guy, I think would probably be the best way to describe him. But he won the Heisman for a reason. He went out there at Indiana and has won a lot of games. They're undefeated. They're one of the favorites to win it all this year. And Fernando Mendoza is the biggest reason why. We talked about in this class with guys like Dante Moore and Ty Simpson, how they're a bit undersized. And that's part of the reason why Carson Beck was even at my number 4 because of the size element. Fernando has the size. He can see the field very, very well. He can make all types of throws out there. A lot of people want to compare him to Jared Goff. I wouldn't say that's the best description of him. Now, in terms of like a physical profile, yeah, Jared Goff is a pretty good comp to him because he is big. He has a big arm. In terms of like, they're not mobile guys. They're kind of similar in that way, but I think in terms of play style, it's a little bit different. I think Jared Goff is pretty safe with the football, doesn't trust his arm a ton out there, makes the open throws generally speaking, and that's worked out great for Jared Goff. I do believe Mendoza has the upside to be around that same level of a Jared Goff type of guy where I don't know if he's ever going to be a top 10 quarterback, but I do believe he can be a really solid starter that is good enough with the right pieces around him to make a big time run. I like Fernando Mendoza. I think he's the best quarterback in this class. I think he's probably the favorite to go number 1. But you guys let me know in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on this year's draft class? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Who's the best player? Let me know down below. And make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button. I love you guys. Peace.